welcome back. Today, I would like to discuss about the psychological cost of boring building. I found an article on the NewYorkMag.com website by Jacob Urist and discuss about how certain buildings built in big cities like New York have become a bit too much bland, unoriginal, and they offer little or no aesthetic value to the city or to the community where it has been built. For example, the article continues to describing what happened when Whole Foods opens up in New York, at the corner between Houston and Bowery in Lower Manhattan. And if you have the chance to just Google it up, this building, it's very bland, very boring. There's nothing special to it. It doesn't stand out, probably because the architects and the design team that was behind the project wanted to create something that it wouldn't stick out too much. Maybe so it wouldn't be a sore eye for the public. Nonetheless, it's not like we have only one type of building in one city. We have different. We have the same pattern of building, the same style that has been spread out throughout the whole Western continent, from the US, Canada, and what now is very obvious, very notorious, is the fact that what is the cost and what's behind and why this type of architecture continue to exist and why there's no evolution and into this perpetration of continuing to design the same type of architecture and using the same pattern, the same materials, and bringing little new innovation to the table. If we consider that big cities on the West Coast, like New York, Toronto, Washington, if we consider the nature of the history of the design and architecture of the history of North America, Canada and the US being a relatively new country compared to Europe or other parts of the world. So we have not so much of a large history of architecture and design. So what has remained is the 18th, 19th and 20th century, the past 300 years worth of architecture that somehow it's relatively new in the whole. However, many buildings in the last 100 years in North America have been demolished to make space for new towers, for new glass towers, especially after World War II, where new technology is allowed to build even bigger buildings, and we had cities literally changing their skyline. So the concept of new structures, new homings, new commercial activities, as long as it provides a bit of variety for the human eye. I mean, we're not meant to live in industrial landscape where we can only see colors in the grayscale. We need variety, and the more variety the better. This is why old towns that there are on the West Coast of North America, they're always been destination tourist attractions that are very pretty, even despite they're not big town centers. Now, the article titled "The Psychological Cost of Boring Buildings" highlights the fact that you and I is not meant to live among the repetition of the patterns of buildings. So we need varieties, and the article highlights one important feature. It says, humans are healthier when they live among variety. A cacophony of bars, bodegas, and independent shops, or working well, design unique spaces, rather than unattractive generic ones. So there you go. In this two lines, it brings up a very important fact, which is the inability of a certain city to receive a much better, different architecture approach. So we adopted this postmodern attitude that now everything has to be square, has to be industrial looking. There are no curves allowed. Either we go with a glass tower and we put everybody in, or we continue to build with a brick. And it seems to be there's no compromise in between these types of design. Now, going back to the fact that variety is an essential for the human eye, it is also important to understand the nature of the building. It's also influenced by the urban landscape, the urban design. So if you do have cities that continue to build with 90 degrees grid system, what do we think that we could achieve if not square designs, square buildings? Because developers will have to maximize the property. So they will go for the whole 90 degrees and the building comes up. It looks like a box, it looks like a warehouse. There's no personality. There's no insight to what can offer to the rest of the cities. And it really becomes just another place where people just spend their time. There's no appreciation for the details. In the last 100 years, we lost the ability to give more decoration to the buildings. There were periods in time where decorations was the main feature, especially in the 17th century and the 19th century, from the Baroque to the neoclassical style that swept across Europe and eventually North America. Now, but we went from a sort of excess in decoration, a lot of frills around columns, pillars, doors. But the last known designer or architect to propose a beautiful integration of details decoration was Gaudí. In the late 19th century and early 20th century, he shaped Barcelona and other parts of Spain's Madrid as well, integrating this Art Nouveau sense of warmth in the building. And it's not just, there's a building and it's meant to store people. How many times you're taking a walk downtown or uptown, and the environment that has been built offers no space for people to truly enjoy the common areas, the venues. So we always see building as something where people should stay inside. We've always seen cities in the last probably 50 or 60 years as something that citizens are not meant to enjoy, to explore, to live, to experience. But now with the fact that we have to be very conscious about how much are we using cars, how much fuel we're using, that we're shaping neighborhoods and building walkable communities. It's a very important step. The article continues in highlighting a very another important piece, which says, in their description of this particular place, they use words like bland, monotonous, and passionless. In contrast, one block east of the Whole Foods on East Houston, at the other test site, a lively sea of restaurant with lots of open doors and windows. People's bracelets measure high levels of physical excitements, and the list of words like lively, busy, and socializing. So there you go. People still enjoy the fact that they love to go outside. They like to go outside. They like to experience the place. They don't just want to be a part of the production chain where they physically go inside, do their shopping. They go through a mechanical environment that is very hostile towards them. People want to enjoy. They want to see that in the good season. They don't want to stay indoors. They want to go outside. They want to truly understand that the city they live, the city that they work, it's more than just a PO box and an address where they are. Public spaces, like we spoke before, public spaces are to be rethought. And the design for the next decades will have to emphasize on pleasing the eye, as well as providing a good point of product that could convey a solid experience for the people. Whether it's a livable community or it's a commercial venue, we can't allow ourselves to just please a few people in a closed into a studio of architects, into a studio of associates that are still attached to the past of glorious Le Corbusier and the whole Bauhaus system. So architecture, along with design, has to provide for a more organic approach in order to please the eye, in order to convey beautiful experiences, in order to become a livable community. It also has to enhance the fact that it's a city. People expect to go through sections sidewalk. They don't just want to stay inside. But what is one of the major factors that determines the success of a neighbor or one itself, the architecture? The thing that determines the success or failure of a building, it's not only the overall shape, it's how it can relate itself to the neighbor. It is the general feeling that people perceive from the structure. And when we decide to design buildings that are not welcoming people, and it looks like they're meant to welcome machines, robots, there are no curves, there are no textures, there's a lack of a human touch, and people don't feel that much motivated to live in such neighborhoods, or even to explore or to go inside such buildings, whether they are supermarkets or coffee shops. There is a psychological disengagement that people experience within certain design and architecture. This example of Whole Foods on Houston and Bowery, it sort of struck me as a very, very play-it-safe building. Something that they didn't want to create anything that wouldn't emphasize the store itself. it's easy to forget. If you go to New York and you stroll to the street of Manhattan or Brooklyn or any other neighborhood, but mostly you'll be located where the things are. So if you're in Manhattan, you do walk by and you don't recognize there's nothing special to see, because architects and designers started to play it way too safe. They started becoming way unoriginal, and they add nothing to the city. They bring nothing to the table. In big cities like New York, then again, the tourism industry, it's a heavy, important driving force, financial force for the city. When you visit some place, you want to take pictures, and you want to see that what characterizes the city is not only the people, not only maybe the weather, but it's also the architecture, the way the roads are built, the way certain design apply to certain part of the town. And it's not only about glass towers. There's this connection, like I mentioned before, this disengagement between buildings and people. It's where buildings are not meant for people. So that people go out and say, "Oh wow, look at that Whole Foods in Houston. Do you want to go there?" No, I'd rather go to my local shop around the corner. I've been shopping there for the past 20 years. And the disengagement that we experience, that people experience, is because buildings are not welcoming. Buildings have this mechanical experience that pull customers to go to. Customers, according to market strategies or design experiences, meant to go there, shop, drop your top dollars articles, buy your organic products, go there, spend $50 to $100 for just like grocery worth a couple of days, go home, come back the next week, rinse and repeat. And this is why these environments that smell like creation from the suburb don't have space, in my opinion. They don't have space anymore in the cities. So when I mentioned before this psychological disengagement that people experience within certain designs or building, that is because people see a building and they don't see themselves as part of it. Whether they're there to shop, whether they're there just to think about moving the neighborhood. There's also a lack of textures, lack of pattern that, materials that we always use like tiles and wood, they used to give a peculiarity to the design. Nowadays, we prefer blunt colors, with a very minimalistic approach on shape, and it's taken away from the aesthetic. Overall, if you think on the large scale, the building might seem nice on the paper, but once you start going in, you zoom into the details, and you see there are many things they're lacking, which is the engagement that people want to experience. I've seen plenty of buildings throughout the world, some from shopping centers to historical homes, and the determining factor that gives a positive vibe and a positive atmosphere is the diversity of the patterns that are upon us. When you walk around and your eyes are constantly engaged with textures that change, with colors that shift from one tone to another, and it's not a repetition of the same color or in a few variations of different shades. We have excellent portions of towns that we see in North American cities like New York or other cities in Canada. The Victorian styles was probably one of the most recent examples that we can take into consideration. Not many buildings have been saved. Many were demolished. The bit of the heritage that North America preserved is slowly fading to give way into this wild construction of glass towers that is leaving a legacy, because eventually in the next 50 years they'll still be there. They'll have no personality. And you see the same buildings made pretty much by 2-3 design architecture firm, and they do this Control-C, Control-V, this copy-paste of the same style in different volumes. And there you go. Now we have cities that, despite the high retail value and the high cost of development, they offer nothing for people, whether they are for the local citizens or for tourists, for visitors. So then again, there's no positive outcome. There's no positive experience to be considered that can come out of this. So there you go. We have cities that are heavily investing in reshaping their skyline. And what they're doing, they're just using the cookie cutter to the same buildings, boring buildings, have no connection to people. It is a boring landscape that we have now, whatsoever, with the same repetition of the same buildings. I found an old article online from the Daily Mail website, and it features the funny list of the most boring building that you can find in the US. So some of them are very ridiculous. I don't even know how the city ever approved many of them. Some are like something like that comes out of a nightmares or bad design, bad architecture, or bad taste. Actually, for example, in Oakley, the headquarters in Orange County in California, there's it looks like something that comes from Tim Burton movies. This mechanical gate and these grey bland buildings. It truly is an eyesore. It's not even like the one at the top of the list. Some of the few, like this one called The Blob, formerly known as the Experience Music Project, a museum celebrating popular music and science fiction. And it was, you can tell this is by Frank Gehry, where there's some type of absurd reuse of wrapped tinfoil. Now, not all Frank Gehry does have his unique styles. Some of the buildings are quite nice. He started stagnating into this loop where all he does is like crumble up a bit of a tinfoil, and then he goes sketch and model for his next creation. Another list is the black and white and battle over, it's called 8500 Melrose Avenue, Los Angeles, California, and made by the architect Rebecca Riddle, which all I always know is not the worst thing that I've seen. It's just a bland building with large windows, and it has these horizontal black and white stripes that hosts it's basically a commercial venue. Then we have a few others. The AT&T building in Texas is monolith, this obelisk, disgusting obelisk, and the central office in Houston, also by AT&T, but it looks like a pyramid with steps without the tip. And there's also a few other things in New Jersey, but we'll skip that. The other one's called the Treehouse of Horrors, the Gatesville Library, University of California, San Diego, in La Jolla, and it was named after Dr. Seuss, Theodore Seuss. Yeah, and this is the spawn of brutalism. We have an extensive use of concrete and rough shapes and glass. This is quite original, not the worst that I've seen anyway. And then we scroll down also to the Trump Tower in New York City. And then again, it's one of those late 70s, early 80s crystal palaces that were supposed to highlight the golden age of capitalism in the US, especially New York. Yeah, it is an excess. It's just a brownish mirror glass buildings that reflects all the other towers around. Nothing special. There's plenty of these things around the world, especially North America. So whether you are in Houston, whether you are in Los Angeles, whether you are in New York, whether you are in Vancouver or Toronto or any other place, sometimes you look around and there's no landmark that characterizes the city you're in. For example, let's take for a second New York. You know you're in New York because before September 11, because of the Twin Towers. We know that. They were quite original, they were standing up. We know there's the Chrysler Building, the Empire State Building, the Statue of Liberty, and those pretty much created big landmarks. Then we go to the West Coast. We go in cities like Los Angeles, for example. There's one big tower and the Hollywood sign, and that's it. Some other places, Calgary, Edmonton. The only thing probably, if you're there in the summer, except there's no, you wouldn't know in which cities you are. You don't even know which state you are, which country. You know if you are in the US, into some Midwest town that has no taste at all in building, but it continues to allow the creation of these gigantic and stupid towers that there's no distinction between. They look alike. So people, whether they live in Pittsburgh, whether they live in other cities in Philadelphia, it's all the same. There's all the other things that the article mentions. For example, another symbol of brutalism is the Mechanic Theater in Baltimore, Maryland. And it says that thankfully in May 2012, a developer filed a petition to demolish the building and replace it with a new development. Now, I don't know, some buildings that go through demolition because they're an eyesore, we have to go case by case. We can't just say, okay, let's demolish, let's build something else, because we don't even know what's the next step. Because if you're going to build another glass tower, well, let's keep the concrete brutalist warehouse. At least it distinguishes itself from the other remaining buildings. not pretty, but we can't just erase the mistakes of the past, because they're there to tell us that was bad design, they were bad decision, let's not do that again. And there we go, there's one of my favorite, which is Boston City Hall in Massachusetts. Now this looks like something from a James Bond movie, like where the villain has constructed like a bunker made out of, in the open, made out of like fortified cement, and all around an abuse of public space with no green whatsoever. There's no interruption of these endless patterns of red bricks that destroy the City Hall Square. It might have looked nice on the paper, it might have looked nice on the sketches, but this is just an abuse of public funds. Maybe in itself, if the building and the city decided just to contain the building itself and not spread the pluralism throughout the whole City Hall Square, that would make a bit of a sense. Yes, there's a statement of architecture from 50 years ago, but then again, let's not do that again. There's another creation that comes from a mixed match of geometrical shape, mixed match of cylinders, pyramids, cubes, and an abuse again of public funds. We have Denver Public Library in Colorado, which then again doesn't even look like a library. It just looks like an amalgamation of different shaped volumes that don't have the ability to let you know that is public library. It just looks like office space. Then we go into, what is this? Oh, this is in Portland, Oregon. It opened up in 1982, basically by the architect Pietro Belluschi. It's called the Porter Building in itself. So we have another warehouse, basically, that features the square windows and a bit of like brushed colors and brown glasses, and voila. But this has to be my favorite, not because the aesthetic, but because of the whole concept. Mall of America in Bloomington, Minnesota, according to the article, is being called the poster child for quantity over quality. We spoke this about the past, about the whole engagement of the commercial experience that customers do about. Now, for the last 60 years, we have seen malls. They all look the same, pretty much. There's little to no different. The interiors, of course, is what matters the most. Waterfall, plenty of shops to go. This is the definition of public space in North America, whether it is Canada and the US. It's actually for Northern US and Canada. This is truly oblivion, because long cold winters, people either stay at home or they go into closed environments. And where they go? To the mall. Or what they do? They shop. It's a driving force in North America. The weather dictates the patterns, the shopping patterns, for the most time of the year. Now, when you have this huge building that doesn't look like a warehouse just because it says Mall of America, or whether Mall of America, Mall of Canada, Mall of whatever other state, literally, I don't know, it doesn't look like. You know, you're going there, you're going to another closed environment. You're surrounded by this artificial environment, fake forestry. You got your waterfall, you got the glass elevators goes up and down. You shop, you forget, but outside there's a minus 20-degree blizzard, or if you're in the summer, you're pampered by air conditioning. Now, what is the outcome of this? It's not only it's ugly, but places like this have no future. And when we spoke in other episodes that skyscrapers, glass towers, and shopping malls, they're all going to be retrofitted if they don't want to be demolished. They could improve them, but the concept of the giga mall, of the 12-hour shopping experience, it will die. It is already dying. It's already on the downfall. It's already on the slippery slope where people don't want to go there to stay all day just to get a pair of briefs or just to get a cup of coffee. Which is fun because people come up and say, well, should we go to a cup of coffee? Oh, let's go to the mall. That is the most depressing thing, actually. There are no other place where you can go enjoy on a public space. You can go and say, sit outside, it's a nice day. There's no bar that has a patio, so we have to go to the mall. Whether it's Mall of America or Mall of any other state, such as the feature of the large building, it's meant to disappear. It's meant to reshape itself if it wants to survive. Otherwise, in the next 10 to 20 years, the mall as we know it will drastically reshape our towns, because they will start closing, they will look abandoned, they will depreciate the value of the homes in the neighborhoods, and they will start a financial spiral where cities will start not to invest anymore, and they won't take care of the urban landscape. And this is why the sooner we start building organic building more susceptible to the eye, the better will be an investment for the cities, and not only for the citizens and for the aesthetic value that it will add to the communities.